Today is Halloween, and honestly the spookiest thing about this video is that I only read 2 books in the month of October. So October was kind of a terrible reading month for me, and honestly, if I'm looking at every single month of 2025, it's the worst month of reading this entire year. It's been bad. I got into a truly disastrous and dastardly reading slump. I know what happened. I can chart the course of like how this came to be, but I'm still reeling from it, and I'm still just like in shock. And if I'm being honest, I know that a lot of my wrap-ups, like my monthly wrap-ups, especially the ones where I'm like in a deep reading slump, do not do well. So it's okay, we're gonna be fine, but I am just like it was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster of emotions this month, and it did not turn out well for me. It was a bad roller coaster, a bad trip, a bad month. So we're gonna get into it. And in order to get into it, we obviously have to start with the first book that I read in the month of October, and that was The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. So I ended up reading this for Latina Heritage Month, and every single year Latina Heritage Month will either be like the greatest month of reading that I've ever had, or it will be the absolute worst month of reading I've ever had. Like, it is a mixed bag almost every time. I never know what I'm going to get. I never know if it's going to send me into a reading slump, and I feel like almost probably about 7 times out of 10 it's going to send me into a reading slump. I don't know why. There's something about the end of September and the beginning of October that I don't know if it's like burnout, or I feel kind of like I can't find a book that I enjoy. I don't know, something happens, it's weird. It should be studied by the top scientists, but we started off with The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I had such high expectations for this book. If you know me, you know that I love Silvia Moreno-Garcia's writing. I have read truly so many books written by her. If we were to count, I have read Mexican Gothic, Gods of Jade and Shadow, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, Velvet Was the Night, Silver Nitrate, The Beautiful Ones, now The Bewitching, Certain Dark Things, and that is what, 7 books, and I have read almost all of her published work. I think the only like big novels of hers that I haven't read are like let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of her like big novels I haven't read yet, so I still have a couple I need to get to. But for the most part, every time I read a Silvia Moreno-Garcia book, I know for a fact it's going to be either a 4 or 5-star rating. I have loved all of her books thus far and really count her as like probably one of my favorite authors of all time. So when I picked up The Bewitching, I just had really high expectations. It sounded like a book that was right up my alley, because even with Silvia Moreno-Garcia, like if she writes a book that is not one I would typically pick up, there's still a high chance of me loving it. And so I had this feeling that I would love this book. It's like everything was aligning correctly, and the synopsis sounded really good. I loved the cover art. I just was so excited. But unfortunately, this was like one of the biggest disappointments of this year. And I said this before a million times, I need to stop putting such high expectations on books, because very often they end up not living up to my expectations and I get really disappointed, and it's a bummer. So this book follows 3 different perspectives. You have kind of like the main perspective is of Minerva, and she is a current college student in the 90s, and she is kind of like looking back on a lot of the stories that her grandmother told her, and her grandmother's perspective is also one of the 3 perspectives in this narrative. But then you also have this third perspective that's kind of separated from Minerva and her grandmother, and it's kind of more focused on the history of the college that Minerva is attending. Sorry, great-grandmother. I don't know why I kept saying grandmother, it's great-grandmother anyway. So you have these like 3 different perspectives, these 3 different storylines that are attempting to come all together and kind of create this one overarching narrative. And in the synopsis it says, perhaps that's why Minerva has become a graduate student focused on the history of horror literature and is researching the life of Beatrice Tremblay, an obscure author of macabre tales. In the course of assembling her thesis, Minerva uncovers information that reveals that Tremblay's most famous novel, The Vanishing, was inspired by a true story. Decades earlier, during the Great Depression, Tremblay attended the same university where Minerva is now studying and became obsessed with her beautiful and otherworldly roommate, who then disappeared under mysterious circumstances. As Minerva descends even deeper into Tremblay's manuscript, she begins to sense that the malign force that stalked Tremblay and the missing girl might still walk the halls of the campus. These disturbing events also echo the stories Nana Alba told about her girlhood in 1900s Mexico, where she had a terrifying encounter with a witch. Minerva suspects that the same shadow that darkened the lives of her great-grandmother and Beatrice Tremblay is now threatening her own in 1990s Massachusetts. An academic career can be a punishing pursuit, but it might turn outright deadly when witchcraft is involved. My main issue with this book was that I felt like the connections between each of these stories were really loose and kind of just like didn't make a lot of sense, or like didn't really seem strong enough to be conducive to like an interesting narrative, if that makes sense. Like, I wanted there to be a clearer connection specifically between the Beatrice Tremblay novel and like Beatrice Tremblay's experience at the college and the great-grandmother stories of living in early 1900s Mexico. And I couldn't really see how everything tied together. It all felt a little bit sort of like vague, a little just coincidental, not like necessarily like, oh, this is like directly echoing what happened before, because two very separate stories are happening, but they're not intersecting. I guess like the intersection is supposed to be Minerva, but she is such a weak character that it's not really clicking for me. I feel like if the novel had focused more on Minerva and the way that she was investigating what happened to Beatrice Tremblay and like finding all the connections to the weird stuff that's happening currently on campus and like finding echoes of it within Beatrice Tremblay's previous work, I feel like that might have been a bit more interesting. Or if there had been a kind of like more obvious connection to what was going on campus to what her great-grandmother had experienced. And I hate to bring this up, but I did write kind of like, not necessarily like a similar novel, but I wrote something kind of similar for NaNoWriMo back in like 2020, I think. And it was basically kind of a similar thing where this young woman is attending college, and it was a college that her great aunt also attended, and she had gone missing while she was attending that college. And so her great niece, while she's attending that college, is like trying to figure out what happened to her great aunt and trying to figure out like, you know, if she really did go missing, or if there was like something a little bit more sinister going on, or there's something a bit more supernatural happening. And she's kind of like following all the threads and like figuring out everything that's happening. And it's a tighter narrative. There's like a bit more of like a narrowing into, this is what's going on, this is what we're focusing on. In this novel, I felt like way too many things were happening in The Bewitching. I felt like we needed to kind of narrow it down a little bit more, zero in on what we're really trying to focus on, what we're really trying to uncover. I felt like there were two really interesting novels in this book, but combining those two really interesting stories into one felt a little too messy. It felt like by the end of the novel, I didn't know what the point was. I couldn't figure out what we were supposed to be focusing on, what we were supposed to be like connecting. Nothing really seemed to be connecting correctly. It felt really messy. I actually think I might have really enjoyed a novel that was focused only on the great-grandmother, because her storyline was so interesting and so enthralling, and I was fully hooked into her story. But with Minerva's story, and even with the Tremblay novel storyline, I could have left it. I could have left it behind. I didn't even really need to read about it. I was really way more intrigued by the great-grandmother's storyline. And I think that that was the biggest issue in this book, is that the storylines were all just kind of too weak, too underdeveloped, didn't really seem to have a lot of connections to each other besides very like surface level connection. It kind of felt like it was trying to be like, oh, Minerva's attending this college, so that's the connection. And it's like, well, is there anything deeper? Is there a deeper connection? Is there like a real like tangible connection to like why this story matters? No, it's just that she attends the college and she's kind of interested in some like supernatural stuff. So that's the connection. It's like, well, that's not enough to build a strong narrative on. It's like, I kind of expected more narratively and stylistically and character development wise, and I had such higher expectations because I have really enjoyed Silvia Moreno-Garcia's storytelling in the past. So I just figured that it would be really good this time as well, but unfortunately it wasn't. And I don't think it helped that I actually have a manuscript that is very similar to this premise that I have written that I kind of prefer more. That sounds awful. That sounds terrible to say, but I do prefer what I wrote over this book. And maybe that's the thing that's kind of tripping me up, is that comparison to my work and being like, I did this and I feel like I did it a little bit better than what was presented here. I just don't see the vision. I don't see the vision. I'm not seeing what's connecting in this novel, and it really sent me into a huge reading slump. It was so bad, and it's still going on. Like, I still feel like I can't pick up a new book, and this happens every time. When I read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, I also got into the most giant reading slump because Sally Rooney is another author that I really trust and respect, and I really have enjoyed a lot of her previous work, but then I got to Intermezzo and I did not like Intermezzo. So yeah, those were all of my thoughts on The Bewitching. I just did not like it. I don't recommend it, unfortunately. I think that Silvia Moreno-Garcia has much stronger work in like her backlog, so definitely would skip The Bewitching, even if it sounds interesting. I don't think that it's worth your time. It's easily skipped over. Move on to a different book. It's not worth it. Like, I genuinely, it's not worth it. The second book that I read in October, which is also the last book I read in October, was Exit Lane by Erika. And this is one of those like 831 romance stories. They're really short, kind of like novella length books. And I have read another one a couple of months ago. I read Grape Juice, and that was incredible, 5 out of 5 stars. So I ended up having an ALC, an advanced listener's copy, from Libro FM, so shout out to Libro FM. And I decided to pick this up because it's short and I figured I would like it, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun read. And it's very much like When Harry Met Sally vibes, like very similar, hits a lot of the same narrative beats. So if you like When Harry Met Sally, this might be a really fun book to pick up. Or, I mean, if you also really love When Harry Met Sally, this might be a terrible book to pick up. I don't know. I know that some people don't like when books are kind of like directly inspired by certain movies, because it can kind of feel like a rehashing of the movie. And I think at points this book definitely kind of felt like a little bit of a rehashing, but I still really enjoyed it because I'm just that kind of person that if I like something, I want more of it. I don't want something different. I want literally the same thing again. The description says, for fans of You Again, One Day, and People We Meet on Vacation, after a post-graduation drive from Iowa City to New York City, Teddy and Marin have both had enough of each other to last the rest of their lives. But that doesn't stop their paths from crossing over 8 rocky years, punctuated by chance encounters and transatlantic visits, on a journey that eventually brings them right back to where it all started. So it was a really sweet little novella, super fun, highly recommend it. In my review, I said that I think it could have been improved by being a little longer. I loved the beginning and the middle and wish we had spent more time on the end. The resolution was so short, I almost worried that it would end abruptly for a bad reason. I did kind of have that feeling of like, oh no, one of them is going to die or something. I'm like, how is this a romance book when it's gonna end badly? It's ending too quickly. I had bad feelings because I don't know, I just did. And thankfully it ended up nicely and with like a happily for now, I guess. So yeah, really enjoyed that one. I will say, content warning for Cancer, there are two kind of like big plot points that involve cancer. So if that is something that you are sensitive to, I would probably skip this one as well. But I really enjoyed it and I highly recommend either this one or Grape Juice. And I am really excited to read anything else from 831 Romance Stories. I don't really know what the actual like imprint name is. I think it's an imprint, I'm not sure. But yeah, I would love to read more from 831 Romances. So yeah, those were the two books that I read in October. I had a terrible reading month. It was awful. I'm really hoping that November is better. I kind of want to start on a clean, fresh slate. I don't know if I want to like kind of soft DNF everything that I have already picked up. I don't know. I'm not sure. I do have a couple of books that I think I might want to pick up that I think will be perfect for November, because November is kind of a tough month because I am not really into Christmas related books. However, I still feel like I'm really in the mood for like autumnal books. So we'll have to see what I end up picking up. I think I have a few ideas, but yeah. And then I also really want to focus a lot more on writing. So that's going to be kind of hard to find that balance between writing and also finding good books to read. So we're gonna have to figure that out. And I've been filming so many more reading vlogs, and I have a lot of writing vlogs that I am planning and currently filming. So that'll be exciting, and I will keep you guys updated with what I'm reading. If you want to be updated with what I'm reading, definitely check out my vlogs. I talk a lot more about the books that I'm reading in those vlogs, so definitely keep an eye out for them in the future. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below. Those are the best places to find me. I'm like always active, especially like on Threads. I've kind of gotten back into Twitter a little bit, and I'm always posting Instagram stories. So definitely make sure to follow me on those platforms. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you again real soon. Bye!